think we're all good. Comment if you can hear me. Am I audible? Yes, welcome back to Folky Fridays. Sorry I've been away for a couple of weeks. I have been riding 300 miles on my bike with all my camping gear on the back for Animal Free Research UK, who are working tirelessly to get rid of animal testing in medical experimentation wherever possible by developing new technologies that basically model various organs in various different ways so that you can practice treatments on them without having to use chimpanzees, dogs, cats, rodents, etc. So I finished that. I had a good time doing it. It got pretty difficult towards the end, but I had a lot of fun. If you want to find out more about that, then actually maybe I should put a link. That's a good idea, isn't it? Why don't I do that? I'll do that very quickly while we're getting started. There it is. I put it in the chat box. But yeah, so I did that. That was good. I got back last week, and from now on I will be back to doing Folky Fridays every week. So basically what I'm hoping to do today is test out the new webcam, which currently only works in this corner, which is why I'm not in my normal nice tidy corner. I'm in this slightly less tidy bathroom corner with my lovely blue tack collection behind me. But you can see the mess lovingly rendered in HD, so that's an improvement, I suppose. But yes, what I want to do today is pretty much open Q&A. So if you've got anything that's been bothering you about music theory or folk guitar or anything like that, anything you'd like to know about, then hit me with your questions and I will endeavour to answer them. We'll see how we get on with that. If we don't hear too much from anybody within the next kind of couple of minutes, then I'll just talk about something. So if anybody's got any questions, do let me know. I'd also like to know anything which you'd like lessons on in future, or any topics you want to see me do more with. Perhaps you're interested in DADGAD or other tunings. Maybe you want to know more about backing tunes with fingerstyle things. Maybe you just want more videos giving examples of how to pick out chords by ear. I don't know. Whatever people want, just let me know, because I've got a day every week now set aside to make a YouTube video. I've got a pretty good list of things to cover. Maybe looking at the styles of some famous guitarists is going to be the next one on the list. But I'd love to know anything you want to know more about, so if there's anything like that, just let me know. So yeah, has anybody got any burning folk music questions that I can help with at all? Okay. Failing that then, I'm going to just run through some of my favourite chords that I've not previously talked about. There's all sorts of good kind of substitutions available to you as a folk player, and it was really interesting talking to Jordan Lively about this the other day, because he's in the north of Ireland. I have not been to Northern Ireland myself, so I don't know what it's like up there, but he says there's a lot of very traditional sessions, and people don't really like hearing jazz chords in them. Well, I love playing jazz chords, so I'm going to tell you about jazz chords. I appreciate, maybe, depending where you are, maybe don't play them. But let's just take one example. If you're in the key of G major, so one thing you could kind of, I've said lots of times before, you can add any sevens and numbers that you want, as long as they're the right kind of chord and the right kind of seven. So if you're in G major, chord 1 is going to be G major. You can make that G major 7. Another thing you can do is with your chord 4 could be C major 7. And the thing that I really like to do is make it C major 9 instead. And that looks kind of like this. That works perfectly well, because what you've done is taken the bass of a C major chord, you've added the 7th note from the scale. So normally a chord is notes 1, 3 and 5. And if you add the 7th as well, you get like that. And adding a 9th to a chord is very safe. A 9th is a note from a scale which is never going to offend anybody. If you add an 11th to a chord, you might run into problems in some contexts. But if you add a 9th, no one's ever going to crib. So to make a C major 9 is like this, and it gives you this lovely kind of fuzzy, warm rain kind of chord, which I really like using as a chord 4. So that's one really nice one, and from that you can go up to the D9 chord, which is like that. And the reason that works really nicely is because the 9th stepping up there, so you've got this note here, the D on the B string, which is the 9th note in your C major 9 chord, and it kind of steps into the 9th note in the D9 chord, so that is a really nice little movement. So you get, and then back to your root note, which is G at the end, so something like that. So yeah, I don't think I've ever mentioned C9 before in a video. I just thought I'd tell you about it quickly while we had some dead time, because it's a really nice chord and I use it all the time. Anyway, comments, what have we got? In the videos of DADGAD, I understand the chords, but not the way of jumping in, escalade, replacing lots of measures of the same chord with others. Right, yeah, you're talking about chord substitutions in DADGAD. There's almost nothing on DADGAD related to traditional Irish music. It's crazy. Okay, the reason for that, I think, is that I've made lots of videos about chord substitutions in the past. I've made the videos in standard tuning, but the theory is exactly the same, and you just need to convert the shapes for DADGAD. But let's have a little look at some DADGAD stuff, and we'll have a talk about chord substitutions, because I see Matt, thanks for tuning in. Matt's saying the same kind of thing. DADGAD lessons much appreciated. Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do DADGAD then. I'll DADGAD eyes. Just bear with me a minute. I picked this guitar up yesterday, and I've not played it before, so it's quite nice to have a little test drive on it. Some of the strings are on it backwards, so tuning it's a bit strange, but lovely. Yeah, let's talk about chord substitutions. So if we're playing along with a standard tune in D major, And actually, I'll tell you what, I'm going to use one of my other videos to demonstrate this. I made a video a while ago which loops a reel in the key of D major called Made Behind the Bar, I think it was. So I'll just find that quickly, and then I can show you what I'm talking about as well. Tune loop. There we go. Skip past the bit at the beginning where I just talk for ages. Shut up. And I'm going to demonstrate stuff on the medium speed. Where is it? There it is. Let's turn the speakers on as well. This is my mascot, by the way, my pet dragon Dave. Lives in the corner by my computer. Sorry about the crackly noise, my speakers do it for some reason, I'm really not sure why. Anyway, right, so yeah, this tune is in the key of D major. The main chords in any major key, 1, 4 and 5 are always major. So if you need to know what the notes in the scale are for this. So for example, it's called some people call it the key signature. So the key signature for D major is F sharp and C sharp, and that means that if you go through a D major scale, it goes D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and that's going to be the scale of D major. If you want to find out more about why key signatures exist and what the modes are, that's really useful to know. I made some videos about that a little while back. There's one called Music Theory for Celtic Music Part 1 or something like that, or Complete Beginner's Guide to Music Theory for Celtic Music Part 1, and it's got a picture of a fat cat eating a pizza as the thumbnail. So if you have a look on the Folky Fridays channel, that's on there. That'll really help you out with knowing why key signatures exist and how to remember those. And the other thing you could do actually is get my invention, the mode wheel, which I'll show you quickly. This is basically a little gadget that just shows you all the chords in a key. And in fact, we'll use it to demonstrate this because it'll make life easier. So yeah, with D major, if you start at the beginning of the alphabet, for our purposes it's D. So you've got chord 1, which is D. Let's turn this off here. Chord 2 is going to be minor. Chord 3 is going to be minor. Chord 4 is major. Chord 5 is major. And chord 6 is minor. And chord 7, for folky purposes, people just don't use chord 7 because it doesn't sound very nice. People tend to avoid it or use a substitute for it, which I'll talk about later on. So your main chords are always chords 1, 4 and 5, which in the case of D major is going to be D, G and A. And so you were saying, how do you substitute those and why is it that you can put other ones in place of them? Well, basically, you've got a kind of underlying framework for every tune. If you're tapping your foot along with any tune, assuming the tune is in the key of D, of course, it's basically likely to start on its key chord. It's certain to end on its key chord, because if it didn't end on its key chord, it wouldn't sound finished and people would get confused and not like the tune. So tunes that catch on end on their key chords. And to get to that key chord at the end of the tune, they always go from chord 5 to chord 1. So in this case, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Chord 5 is A, going back to D at the end. So that's what you're going to get at the end of the tune. And that's also what you're going to get at the end of the sections. So you've got an A part and a B part. Each part is 8 bars long, and each part is repeated. So it goes A part, 8 bars of that, then it does the A part again, then it does the B part and the B part again. So basically, in every seventh, yeah, at the end of every 8th bar, it's going to go from A back to D, because that's going to be the end of a section. As well as that, sorry, I just had to think about it then. As well as that, halfway through every section as well, it does that. So effectively the rule is you're going to have chord 5 every 7th time your foot taps, because in Irish tunes your foot is going to tap twice per bar. Apart from polkas, they're different. But for jigs and reels, your foot taps twice per bar. So for every 7th foot tap, you're always going to have chord 5. So those are like the first rules of folk music. Every 7th foot tap is chord 5, and at the end of every section, it goes back to chord 1. So that gives you a kind of definite framework for every tune in the key of D major ever, pretty much, which is something like this. You've got D. I'll just write slashes for where other chords could, foot taps that we haven't put chords on yet. Da 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 da. Da da da. Da 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 da. Something like that. That would be your. This would be your A part. So you'd have something like probably chord 1 to start with, very lightly, not always, but almost always. So D D D D D D. 7th foot tap, definitely A A A. Then back to D D D D D D D, and then it's the end of a section, so you go from A back to D, and that's pretty much universally true for all Celtic music, and to be honest, most folk music, certainly from England and Western Europe, but also from a lot of the world. So yeah, that's the kind of basis. Let's just we'll take the made behind the bar. If you get it up in another tab, I've actually put chords on it, and there's several different versions of the chords, but the first lot is just the simplest chords, and I'll use that to demonstrate what I'm going to talk about in a minute. So that's a link for the tune play along there. So when you've got chords 1 and 4 and 5 kind of in there, and when you listen to the tune, the next step is to work out where chord 4 goes, because a tune in a major key can always be broken down just into chords 1, 4 and 5, and some sections sound like they need chord 4. I'm not going to go too much into the music theory behind this, because it's much better just to learn to trust your ears. If you're listening to a tune nice and slowly, like this, I'll play this once through just so you can hear it. See if I can get it from the beginning. What I'll do, I'll put my hand up when I hear a chord 4 section. So it starts on chord 1, which is D. D, D, D. That bit there would be a nice bit to put chord 4 on. And that's your chord 5. D, 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 G, 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 A, back to D. So it's like there's a feeling to chord 4 sections. They kind of feel like the tune's sort of moved away a little bit. That's the best way I could describe it, really. It feels like the tune was kind of telling you a story about one thing, and it's sort of momentarily changed topics, or a new character's come in, or something like that. So you've got bum bum ba da 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 dun da 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 da. Then it's back to where it was before. Bum ba da 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 ba ba da ba da. Something like that. So that's a thing that you kind of just learn to feel, and you can practice it in all sorts of ways. One way is I actually made a load of exercises which are designed to help you practice that, and they're in the audio section of my first book, Backing Guitar Techniques for Traditional Celtic Music, which you can have a look at if you want to get some ear training exercises. Another way you can do it is just to practice playing along with tunes and just using chords 1, 4 and 5. So going back to our A part here, I can put my G chord in there. Tune kind of sounds like it's moved away a bit. Then we're back to the start of a section. Something like that. So that's the simplest possible version of the chords that we could have. Just going back to this thing about chord 4 sections. Do you want me to... Is anybody interested in the physics-based reason why chord 4 sections are chord 4 sections, or do you want to just go with they feel like chord 4 sections? Because I could waffle about this at great length. I find it really interesting, but I appreciate that most people do not find it half as interesting as I do. So if you'd prefer me not to waffle about that, maybe we'll just move on to the substitutions, which is what you actually asked about. Yes, okay, cool. So within a scale you've got, you're probably aware that when a string is vibrating, that's what's producing the sound, and a vibrating string has a frequency, which is how often it oscillates, how often it vibrates, and that's kind of pushing the air, creating a sound wave, and that's what your ear is perceiving as its pitch. So how often that string vibrates is what your ear perceives as pitch. You can make it vibrate more often either by tightening the string up, so adding more tension so that it has to vibrate faster, because there's more tension pulling it back towards the middle every time it moves away from the middle. Or you can shorten the length of the string by putting your finger on a fret somewhere, and that also makes it vibrate faster because the length is shorter. So if the frequency of the string, let's say hypothetically that a D note is doing one oscillation per minute, which is one hertz. That's what hertz stands for. One vibration per. It's actually one vibration per second is hertz. So let's say it's doing one vibration per second. Obviously, it's going to be doing way more than that, but for easy maths, I'm going to say it's 1. Then the octave would be exactly twice that frequency, and that's where octaves come from. They're doing twice the frequency of vibrations. The other notes that sound nice played with that note are notes which are making simple ratios. Their frequencies are in simple ratios to the first note. So if our first note is doing 1 wobble per second, another note that was doing... Actually, 1 is not a simple one for the maths at all, is it? Now I think of it. Let's say our D note is doing 2 wobbles per second. If another note were doing 3, so that one's doing 3 to this one's 2, then the note that you would hear the second note as being is D's perfect fifth, which is A. So that's doing 3 wobbles to D's 2. And the reason that those two sound more harmonious together than some other random note is because if you looked at the sound waves for those, most of the time they are frequencies which are in simple ratios to one another, their wobbles are going in the same direction for the highest possible amount of time when they're played together. Because if 2 sound waves are pushing in opposite directions, they'll cancel each other out. So actually, if you had, let's say our D is doing something like that, so that's the start of it. That's 1 complete wobble for a D. That's 1 complete wobble for a D wave, something like that. And then if we had another wave where that one does 1 complete wobble there, if we've got an octave which is doing something like that. So so 2 complete wobbles. Here they're going to be working together, so you're going to get a great big peak here, going like that. Here, this section, they're cancelling each other out, so you're going to get pretty much nothing. There you've got a great big peak going downwards. Anyway, so that's how sound waves work. But my point is that the notes in a major scale are the most harmonious notes available, and any other notes which you could hypothetically make are less harmonious when played against the root note than the notes in the major scale. There are other reasons for this as well, which involve a more in-depth knowledge of how strings vibrate, because you've got other vibrations taking place within a string, which give you partials, which are like extra tones, which are quieter but perceived within the sound of a guitar. And those partials are what make a guitar sound different to a saxophone or a violin or whatever. But I won't talk about them because we're going to go into a whole acoustics seminar and we'll be here all day. Anyway, the most harmonious notes within a major scale then are the simplest ratios, which are 2 to 1, which is the octave. So if one wave does 2 wobbles when the other does 1, then the higher one is an octave above the lower one. 3 to 2, which gives you the perfect fifth. Then 4 to 3 is less harmonious, and that gives you the fourth. And then all the others are less harmonious again. As well as that, you've got within the first note, you've got its partials are partials in order. The partials that you hear within a D note when you play it on a guitar, you're quieter than the fundamental frequency. You're also hearing the note which is an octave above it, then the note which is a fifth above that, then the note which is an octave above that, and then the note which is a major third above that. So that is the root of our major chord that we like the sound of, the major triad, the root, the third, and the fifth. And so, if you hear a melody and you hear a D note, D's major third, which is F sharp, and then A if it's brief, but mainly D and F sharp, then it's going to be very chord 1E. And when your ear is picking out chords, it's only listening to the dominant beats within a tune in order to pick chords. So if you've got a phrase like the first bar in this tune, but for example goes da da dun da da da, so you've got do do, that's 2 notes out of a D chord, do do, 2 notes which harmonise very nicely with D. Then da da. The second half of the bar you could change chords if you wanted to, or you could just leave it D. Then the bar after that, da 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 da, basically da 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 da, 2 notes from a D chord, da da, and a D at the end. So it kind of outlines a D. You know, there's all these little clues. If you hear on a dominant beat of a tune, the first note, which is D, its major third, which sounds nice with it and is one of the partials of a D note, so it sounds very much like a D anyway, or the fifth if it's followed up with lots of other D notes, then you're going to want chord 1 there. Likewise with the 6th note, because the 6th note, the major third of the 6th note is D, so the 6th note is a chord 1 note as well. So if you're hearing D, F sharp, potentially A, B, any of those a lot within a bar, that's going to be a chord 1 bar. If you're hearing, on the other hand, the 4th note a lot, so G, or D, which is, sorry, not D, if you're hearing G a lot, or you're hearing something like a chord 4 arpeggio, so G, B and D, if you're hearing any of those together a lot within a section, your ear will infer that that's a chord 4 sounding section. And it's mainly just working off the dominant beats. chord 5 sections in Celtic music, you don't have to think about them because there aren't any. They're only on the 7th foot tap so that they can go back to chord 1. So I hope this is all making sense. Yvonne says go with the feeling. Yeah, 100%. If you find that this is a lot to think about, then your ear... The other good thing is your ear naturally knows how to do all this stuff long before you learn how it's doing all this stuff. Ears are very, very good at picking out from a tune what chords should go where, and they do it innately without any conscious part of the brain knowing that they're doing it. The important thing is to train the conscious parts of your brain, I suppose, to pick out that kind of innate information from the ear and learn how to use that in a way that you can then convert into thinking, oh, I could actually put a G or an E minor in this section. You know, that's linking the subconscious and the music theory brain together is the really tricky part. But hopefully we'll help with that a bit. Has everything I've said so far kind of made sense? So basically, the most important thing to take away from everything I've said so far is if you've got a chord 1 section, it's going to be probably at the beginning. Your ear is only listening to the dominant beats of a tune, aka the ones on which your foot taps. The notes which are playing at those points, and any long notes within a tune, are the most important ones for inferring what the right chord is. If those notes are notes 1, 3, or 6, or 5, then it's very likely to be a chord 1 section. And if those notes are 4, 6, and 2 together, because those are the notes of chord 4, if you're getting those notes together a lot in a bar, then it's probably a chord 4 bar. But much better than that is just trust the feeling, because sometimes you'd look at the sheet music and you'd probably get the wrong idea from it. Whereas if you just listen to it, you can kind of feel it, and you can sort of develop that by just practicing finding chord 4 sections. I'm going to put chords. The videos of DADGAD use passage chords for little. Yeah, cool. Right, we'll get on to that then. So once you've used this kind of thing to work out where 1, 4 and 5 go, there's loads of ways you can make just playing D, G and A for hours a lot more interesting. The very first thing is related minors. Every major chord has a related minor, and vice versa, every minor chord has a related major. So for D major, anyone on the comments, what's D major's related minor? D major, anyone? Ah, there's a delay, isn't there, between when I can see myself pointing at the screen now. To be fair, I know Yvonne knows this. Matt, almost definitely, you know what I'm on about. B minor, yes, we got it. Wicked. Thanks, Yvonne. Oh, I'd like something to help with performance anxiety. Yes. I can't help loads with that because I'm absolutely terrible for performance anxiety, which is why I don't do many gigs. But I'll try and tell you the few things that I have in a minute. Yeah, B minor. Yeah, everyone's got it. So yeah, B minor. If we took this A part, we wanted to make it interesting. The first thing we could do is change D to B minor. You can do that with any of them. You'll get different results with different ones, but let's just hypothetically do it with the very first one. Tends to be, if it's the first time through a tune, don't switch out the first chord because people will get confused. If they've already heard that they're in the key of D by hearing it at the beginning and the end, then you can mess about with any of them to your heart's content. So let's do something like D, 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 B, E minor. Then G's related minor is E minor, so you could put E minor there if you wanted to. Related minors are always 2 notes back in the same scale, by the way. So G, F sharp, E minor, D, C sharp, B minor. And that's always the same. And if you've got a minor chord and you want its related major, then you go 2 steps forward instead. You're not allowed to switch out chord 5 for its related minor. That's the only one that's kind of sacrosanct. But I'll come back to where you can. So there's one little version, and I'm just going to write another one, slightly different. I'm going to put one of those there. So here is another version that you could do. You've got D, you switch it up, you change it to its related minor. The chord 4 section kicks in there then, and I've put chord 4's related minor instead to make life more interesting. And then it's 7th foot tap, so you've got to have chord 5, and that's always true. On this time through, I could have done the same thing again, because it's a repeat of the same tune, of course, more or less. But I haven't. Instead, I've put my B minor right at the beginning, and because I've started out on a negative chord, and I want to keep the rate of chord changes the same, because personally, this is personal preference, you don't have to do this, but I tend to find I like my lengths of chords roughly to match most of the time. So if I've been changing one chord per bar, then I'm going to keep changing one chord per bar, unless I change it for an effect for some reason, like to build the tune up or because the tune changes or something. So I've gone with my B minor, and then I've switched to chord 3, which is F sharp minor. That's going to sound very kind of dark and moody, but then it goes up nicely into G. F sharp minor is A's related minor, but it also works as a substitute for D. So this leads me on to the second kind of substitute, which I'll talk about. After you've got your head round related minors, the other kind of substitute, I still don't have a catchy name for this. I've been saying I'll come up with one for years and I haven't. But it's the minor which is 2 steps up from any chord. So for D, D, E, F sharp, if you play F sharp minor in place of D, that will sound okay. This kind of substitution sounds a bit like a roadblock. If I play, I'll just show you quickly on the guitar. If I play a D, see what? So there's D. Here's F sharp minor. If I play a very definite sounding F sharp minor, you can hear it kind of sounds like D, everything is good, F sharp minor, stop! You know, it's a strange one. But then if you resolve it up into G, then it sounds okay. So that's a nice thing that I've done there. And what I've done in this context is gone from B minor down to my F sharp minor, then up to G, and then up to A, which is a really nice chord progression. You'll see every folk guitarist do that one a lot because it's easy to play and it sounds lovely. So yeah, that's very, very common. Yeah. Just on the same note as this, with these substitutions that are 2 notes up, with a G, like a chord 4 section, you could replace that G with B minor if you wanted to, for the same reason, G, A, B minor. The reason is for that it's got 2 notes in common, so it's fundamentally the same chord but with the root missing, so it works just as well, adds a nice interesting little variation in the flavour. So this is like a slightly more interesting version of the chords. And then you were saying about passing chords for little amounts of time. So really what passing chords are usually doing is kind of filling in gaps in the scale. And the way to think about it is in terms of like little bass line runs. So if you've got this chord progression here, if we just look at this line, D, D, B, B, E, E, A, That's what that would sound like as a bass line. Da 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 da. D down to B and any chord to its related minor, you know there's just one step in between, so it's nice to add in that little link so that instead of going da 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 da, your bass line goes da 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 da. It kind of just fills in the space nicely. So what I would do to do that is fill in a little passing chord, which I'm going to call it C sharp in brackets. What chord it actually is, we won't worry too much. But in DADGAD this is very easy to do, because if you've got a D chord, which is just one finger, then you can add your third finger on the 4th fret of the A string, and that gives you this nice little C sharp chord. And that's just acting as a little bass note to run you down to B minor, and I'm going to play lazy B minor 7 like that. So that little run just kind of fills in the space and makes your backing sound a bit more fluid. Something like that. So that's one nice little passing chord you could use to kind of add a level of fluidity to this progression. Let's see if I can come up with any others. Another thing that I personally would do is, so if I'm going da da dum da, I've got to get all the way, that's a very big jump from B minor all the way down to E. And one way you could do that would be to stick in a little mini F sharp minor here. So I might put an F sharp minor there. With these passing chords, if a passing chord comes in not on a dominant beat, it doesn't really affect the tune. Non-dominant beats for kind of Celtic harmony aren't really important in my experience. So putting an F sharp minor here is not going to throw anybody off or anything, it's just going to act as a link between your B minor down to your E. So now your bass line goes da 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 da. I can't sing a low E because of my nasal tinny voice. But anyway, I'll demonstrate what it sounds like. That would probably help, wouldn't it? So you end up with something like D, C sharp, B minor, F sharp minor, E. Something like that. So you've gone from just something really boring like that all the way to really by just using very simple substitutions and then filling in the gaps between them. And this kind of ground up approach of just finding the chord 4 sections and kind of cementing where they are in your mind first, and then filling in substitutions and then joining them up. That's why I like to kind of teach Irish backing that way, because I find that if you've got those chord 4 bits firmly in your head and you practice your chord runs and ways of linking them together, then really you can't really go far wrong. You're always going to sound like you know what you're doing, especially in DADGAD, where all those open strings will make, even if you play the wrong chord momentarily, they'll make it sound deliberate. That's a great advantage of DADGAD in a way, that the open strings are kind of harmonious, so a lot of mistakes get covered up by that. But yeah, I think this is the best way of approaching it, and probably the easiest to get the feel for, you know. Thanks for tuning in anyway, Mary, and yeah. There's loads of videos that set up all the kind of theory groundwork for this. If you want to have a look at those, they're all on the Folky Fridays channel. Yeah. So yeah, that's the main thing about DADGAD passing chords. Just one last thing on this. We'll stick with the key of D. it's really useful in order to get these passing chords and use them correctly to just practice chord scales. So for the key of D, if you go back to what I was saying before, you've got chords 1, 4 and 5 that are always your main ones, they're all major, and then 2, 3 and 6 are minor. And chord 7, we'll use that kind of D with a C sharp added at the bottom of it. We'll use that as a chord 7 substitute. So that gives us a whole scale of chords which we can use to get these nice little passing chord runs. So we can do D, E minor, F sharp minor, G, A major, B minor 7, D with a C sharp, D, C sharp, B minor, A, G, kind of F sharp minor, E minor, D, things like that. And I really recommend just practicing playing through chord scales, just jamming along in different rhythms like. Those kind of things. It's really easy to make just playing through a chord scale and putting chord 4 in the right places sound like some amazing bit of fancy guitar work, you know. Yeah, so that's about all I have to say on passing chords. Any other questions on that, or shall we move on? I hope that's helpful anyway. There are other passing chords as well, like more cheeky ones, more jazzy kind of ones, using unusual substitutions and chromatic passing chords and things like that. As I've already said, they're not in vogue in some sessions. In others they are. I like them, but not everybody does. So yeah, if you want to know more about them, I've talked quite a bit about them in one of the previous Folky Fridays. I did one which was about modelling together the modes deliberately, and that talks about chromatic passing chords a bit. So you might be interested in them. But these kinds of ones sound the most safe, and you can't really make any major mistakes with these. Whereas the others can sound truly dreadful if they go wrong. And even if they go right, you get frowned at for it. So yeah, that's something to move on to when you're bored of these. But what was Yvonne saying a little while ago? I'd like something to help with performance anxiety. I've really noticed that if people are listening to me and then I become hyper anxious, which has a negative impact on performance. Yeah, as I say, I'm not really very good at this. I'm fine with folk music. I can play folk music in front of people all day because it's improvised and people expect it to be improvised, and I like that about it. I like being in the moment and responding to music. If it's anything that I've had to learn in advance, I can learn it to the point where I can play it perfectly well for myself and to my friends and stuff like that, but then I go and do gigs and I'm like so I'm maybe not the one to ask about this. I tend to avoid doing anything which isn't at least partly improvised, because pre-learned music I just don't seem to be able to do without getting so shaky that I can't play. However, somebody got me a book fairly recently. Let me see if I can find it. Down here somewhere. Yeah, this book's quite good. Thank you to Neil who got me this book. It's quite an interesting read, The Inner Game of Music, which is by Barry Green. But it was the kind of inner game concept was invented by Timothy Galway, who did The Inner Game of Tennis was his first one, and it's all about how to avoid performance anxiety and how to practice in a way that you get your maximum capacity under pressure And the Inner Game of Music has got a lot of good stuff about avoiding performance anxiety, so that might be one to have a look at. Have I got any top tips for it? Really, all you can do is just keep performing and try not to worry about it. The more you do it, the better you'll feel. The more you feel like every aspect of it that is under your control has been dealt with beforehand. You know, if there's even if it's little tiny things, they have a big impact on your mental state. So just things like making sure you've put your plectrum holder on your guitar so you're not going to run out of plectrums halfway through, or, I don't know, making sure you've got fresh backup strings in your case. All these little things kind of make you feel more like you've only got one thing to think about. With folk music, I would say try and switch off as much as you can. Just go by the feeling, which I know if on you're very good at that anyway. That's you know, that's what you're really good at, isn't it? So yeah, because the more you're thinking about, am I doing this right, and thinking about what is the right chord to substitute here, and what could I do there, and is that person over there playing a different chord to me, and things like that. Those are the things that are going to throw you off. With music as a kind of, folk music particularly, it's a kind of communicative thing, and it's like it's a language which we've learnt in one half of our brain and not really linked up very well to our kind of semantic thought processes, I think. This is how I think of it. So if you're letting those semantic, logical things encroach on just going with the flow of it, that's what's going to mess up your flow and make your backing experience less enjoyable. The main thing to remember, of course, is that no one's going to notice. If you do something wrong, they won't notice. Guaranteed they won't notice, unless it's a major clanger. But the thing they really will notice is if you stop and cry, you know, then they'll notice. But if you play a G instead of an A, or they might twig it briefly, but it's gone by so fast anyway. Especially at session speeds, like no one's got enough memory capacity to remember that you played the wrong chord in bar 4. Oh God, no! I definitely wouldn't recommend that. No, it's never been a helpful one, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, but yeah, that's about it. I'm afraid I can't help loads with that one, but just keep going. The more you can play with other people in sessions and things like that, where the opportunity is there just to play quietly and people won't notice, the better you'll feel about playing other environments where people are actually listening, just through having played in front of people before. Even if, you know, it's a lower pressure setting, but it's still the same thing, isn't it? It's, what do they call it? Well, you stop being afraid through exposure, even if it's a lower level thing. You know, build your way up, I suppose. Anybody else got any particular questions about anything, or shall we sign off for today? I'm about for another couple of minutes. If anyone's got any further things? Someone told me. yeah, I've heard that one before. Yes, it's worth a try, isn't it? Personally, I think I'd probably be more nervous if that were the case. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can't really see how it would help myself. On the subject of future topics, I will make more DADGAD videos. Particularly, there's one thing that came up from talking to Jordan the other day, which I'd never thought of or seen anybody talk about, and it's really interesting what he said. It was just about a little scale where you're... I haven't actually played with it yet, but let me see if I can work it out quickly. Anyway, it's a scale where you can play the whole of a D major scale without repeating a string once, which means that you can play fingerstyle stuff in DADGAD a lot faster because you never have to twiddle the same finger twice. And I saw that and I was like, that's so useful. Why have I not ever used that for anything? So I'll be making a video about that soon. I'll be making more DADGAD videos as well, and I'll actually be playing in DADGAD more myself because I hardly ever do it, to be honest. I'm working out some more interesting jazzy chords in it as well. So yeah, lots more DADGAD stuff to come. Cool. Well, if nobody's got anything, any other burning questions they want to ask or anything like that, I think we'll leave it there today. If you want to practice the DADGAD linking chords that I was talking about, if you go on that Made Behind the Bar video, when you get to the fast speed version of it, it shows you a version of the chords which has linking chords in it. So if you want to practice coming up with your own and then maybe have a go at the ones that are there, you could even write them down and play them along with the slow or medium version because the fast version is fast. And I have actually changed, I'm making a load more, I'm making a whole pack of 20 of these play-alongs at the moment, and I've changed the format slightly so that on the medium speed you get the advanced chords, because I realised that playing advanced chords at full speed when you're new to them is nigh on impossible, so I've changed that, which I think will make them a bit better to use. Improving speed of playing. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Ooh, do you know what, Matt? That's a really good idea. Really good. Yeah. Okay, I'll have a think about that one. But one thing I have been meaning to do is I've got all sorts of little fudges which make changing chords too late or too early, or changing to the wrong one and then sliding up one. Things like that you find yourself doing, especially in fast sessions where there's alcohol involved. I've got all sorts of little tips for fudging those so that people don't notice. So actually, I'll bear with me a minute. I'm going to write that down because I'll go away from this and I'll forget straight away. Yeah, I'll make a note of that. That's a good one. Here's the YouTube book. This is my YouTube book, like all the things to make videos about in it. Playing at speed. Fudges. The main tip for improving your playing speed is use a metronome. Every time you learn a new strumming pattern and you're working on it, rather than just working on it and going, oh, I've basically got it now, or I'm really struggling, do it along with a metronome, because the first thing is when you're learning it and you're getting frustrated with it, or you feel like you had it yesterday but today you can't get it again, you'll inevitably speed up. And if you've got a metronome, I actually keep a little diary. I use there's the Folk Friend practice diary, which is kind of designed so you can do that. But I've got one of them that I use for accordion practice, which is my latest hobby. And I use a metronome for practicing that, and I write down, on this day I was doing it this fast, and then I put the metronome on one speed slower than that the next time, and I get used to that, and then I put it up one, and then every time you bump it up a notch, you feel like you can see that you've improved, and you've got a record of it, so you feel good about it. Whereas if you're just kind of improving, but you've got no metrics to check against, you don't really know a lot of the time. You look back a few months and you go, oh, I've come on, but you can't tell day by day that you're improving, so your motivation isn't there. So if anybody does want a Folk Friend practice diary, finaleguitar.co.uk/shop, they're on there. I'll show you mine actually, I've got one here somewhere. This isn't my accordion one, this is just a blank one, but it's got like a weekly planner thing in it. So you put your month and which week you're on, and then you say what I achieved last week, what I achieved this week, and then each day what have I done this day, or what am I going to do this day. Plan out your practice in advance, and then I'd like to write little notes for what I should be doing next week on Friday or Saturday usually, and then the next Monday I come back and I go through and work on that, so that's quite handy. But yeah, mainly is just practice with a metronome, and it also stops you if you're having a rubbish day and you're knackered and you can't be bothered practicing, and then you make yourself do it anyway. It tends to be that if you're getting frustrated with something, you'll speed up, which makes it harder, and you speed up more, and eventually you throw the guitar out the window and you never play it again. So definitely don't do that. Metronomes. That's my main tip for that one. Have I got any others? The other one actually is practice playing something slower than you're capable of. And for example, if you were practicing a reel pattern, let's say you're just doing a reel pattern like bog standard reel pattern, bumper chacker. Practice doing it slowly, and then practice altering it dynamically, so doing things like playing it really quietly, playing it really muted, playing it with just the upstrokes accentuated. I can't do it, but that kind of thing, and then making it less muted over time. All these kinds of things, you know, there's loads of different little modifications which you can really only add when you're doing it slowly. So it's worth just practicing it really slowly and trying to find as many subtle variations on that as you can, and then gradually work each one of those up to speed. Ideally using a metronome, but yeah, it's another useful thing. But yeah, I will make a video about that one soon. Any more for any more? Cool. Okay, I think we'll call it a day there then. Well, I'm glad this has been. I'm glad this has been good. I'm glad I did the open Q&A. I wasn't sure whether anybody would actually have any good ideas for things to talk about, but this has been really good. So thank you all for your questions. Thank you to I'm not even going to attempt pronouncing your name. Yes, I am. Travis. Oh, it means over the river, doesn't it? Travis del Rio. Yeah, Travis del Rio. Thank you to Yvonne. Thank you to Matt. And thank you to Mary for tuning in. And thank you to everybody else out there who watches after the stream, which is most of you. And also thank you very much to everybody who donated to my fundraiser as well. We're on about 500 odd quid, I think, at the moment. Oh, 400 quid. £404, which is not bad. Donations are still open for another couple of weeks. If anybody does want to donate who hasn't already. Yeah. Cool, so that's it from me for this week. And next week's topic, I'm not sure what it'll be yet. Probably something DADGAD related, seeing as everybody seems to want DADGAD stuff. So maybe I'll have a look at DADGAD next time. Maybe we'll do D minor in DADGAD. That might be interesting. But yeah, keep an eye on the Folk Friend Facebook page anyway. I always post things on there as soon as I know what's going on with them. You can find Folk Friend Facebook. Just go on Facebook and type in Folk Friend Celtic Guitar or something like that. You'll find it on there. It's linked at the bottom of all my videos as well. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and I will see you all next Thursday for another video, and next Friday evening for Folky Fridays.